Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to another Propagandacast Lehr with me, your host, Imperial Dane, Master of Instruction. Today's topic, harassment. Yes, indeed, harassing the enemy. And specifically in this case, more in my own mind, harassing their resources. Overall, the key to good harassment, and one of the reasons why you do harassment is basically just, it hits the resources, slow down the acquisition of tech, more units for the enemy. More importantly, it also forces them to divert forces away from the main combat zone, because that's really one of the key elements to harassment. It is to strike where opponent isn't. It is to hit them at all the soft spots, forcing them to react to your movements. Thusly, good harassment is really effective on several levels, because it not just only denies them resources, it denies them frontline forces because they have to put back towards elsewhere, and it also just has a psychological pressuring element where it just constantly hit them where they're not mentally there. Thus, they force them to constantly divert mental attention towards it. So overall, in that regard, it's also hopefully figure out what one of the key elements to good harassment is. It is to hit the enemy where they are less present. I mean, if the opponents are really focused around here, you generally want to be harassing towards this side of the map where there's a lot less forces from him, or against these more here, then you're trying to harass over here. It sort of depends a bit on the map there, but overall you sort of try to look for open spots and sort of looking in the general opposite direction of their opponent is in terms of map control. If they can do, they can generally already just get a good start in there and sort of cut off a lot of resources, deny him fuel, which of course is the most important. But even denying munitions can be quite impactful in the longer run, as it means there's less room for grenades, anti-tank weapons, mines, weapon upgrades, abilities from the doctrines, so many things they can sort of just really make difficult for your opponent to utilize through good harassment. Plus, of course, hitting a victory point, it can also have an impact, maybe not early on, but later on, that can also prove to your advantage. And of course, there's also the part where getting to just force your opponent to react, and particularly hit the soft spots. A good key to harassment is also consider, which point is going to be, faster to cut off. I mean, again, you want to hit a fuel point, you might as well just also consider just hitting the point behind it, the connecting point for the fuel point. That way, denying them resources not just for the point itself, maybe any other points and the fuel point. That way, again, they might even be forced to further draw back. So, for example, could hit the fuel point directly here, but if I hit the point up here, it's going to have to divert forces even further away from the front line to hit it. And of course, that's also an important thing here. Harassment is not necessarily linear. I mean, some players will just go through this point into this point. You can do that when you this. But I mean, another option is just to go past all this, sneak through the enemy territory again, where he's got no eyes, so he can't see you sneaking out. They're infiltrating, and then you just get straight up to the more juicy, far behind points. Then you hit them, and then you force them to react all the way over there. And of course, depending on what you want to do, you can also send different forces, like you're sending cheap builder units, pioneers, re-echelons, engineers, whatever, much more easily just, forcing slightly almost inordinate response. Again, they have to send a full rifle squad to deal with it or whatever. But of course, you can also send an elite infantry unit to do the harassment. In some ways, it falls away from the front line, but at the same time, it can enforce a much bigger response for the opponent. And if they're not expecting it, that is, you sort of try to hide it. In which case, a good trick is actually stay at the edge of the point, because it only sees what's right next to it. So it sort of places right at the edge. They can't actually see what's harassing. So if they're sending, a regular infantry squad to deal with an elite infantry unit, they might actually get a bit of a nasty surprise. So those are small tricks they can sort of apply to increase the optimalcy of the harassment. The important thing to keep in mind, of course, is also light vehicles. Light vehicles are sort of really good at sort of dealing with harassers, but they can also be useful at supporting harassers. You got a 2-2 roaming about, pushing back enemy harassers, or supporting your own harassers. That way, if they try to, there might be suddenly a surprise there. But in particular, up against the Allies, I mean, they can really hard lock down harassment with their own light vehicles. There's certainly something to keep in mind. But even then, you can also use that light harassment to bait them into traps. I mean, a good key, for example, is, for example, your opponent's light tank is over here. You hit the point here, but before you do that, you have to lay down a telemine around here, or some kind of other mine that might be able to set up something else in ambush. You then hit the point there. They rush down the light vehicle, because that's the fun thing that's going to be able to act immediately, and then they hit the mine. So good harassment can, that way also be used to, bait your opponent into ambushes they otherwise, might not be, quite ready for, because again, they have to react in most cases. And then when they do, you sort of hit them really hard with some kind of strong force. So in that regard, good harassment can be utilized in many ways. And again, not just for denying resources, not just for drawing away forces from the front line, but even then to bait specific forces into well-prepared ambushes, and that way taking them out. So again, good harassment is really, I think, a good element to acquire in company heroes too, and something you can really sort of work a lot to improve upon. So These are honestly just some of the sort of, say, rules or tips I can sort of give you on sort of good harassment. There's probably a lot more, but I mean, you got to sort of start with something. But again, just consider things not necessarily in a linear move. Again, you just have to take all the points, just hit the more juicy points. Consider, what response your opponent might have in that regard. Also consider, well, how am I going to get the unit out occasionally? I mean, you might try and harass, but you might actually end up in a retreat path that's going to occasionally on some maps take you for enemy territory, in which case you might want to try an exit plan. In that regard, having an exit plan for your harassers is not a bad idea in general. And of course, an exit plan being how the hell do we get them out of there if the opponent hits them really, really hard and tries to, murder them with a blob or something else, or some kind of light vehicle or, anti-infantry tank. So those are, of course, some things to keep in mind. But again, you can also use the harassers, try and bait them into a situation where all of a sudden, you're hitting them with something they did not anticipate at all. Other things you can do, of course, is lay down mines as you're harassing. You can try and stay on the edge of the point. A few mines there, for example, can do a lot to really ruin your opponent's day as well. S-mines of the Germans can be used, of course, they're a bit more obvious, but even then, laying down S-mines on one of their vital points can make things really difficult for them in some circumstances. So, again, try and sort of mix and match your options, your opportunities when harassing. And of course, I mean, it's not always going to be time for harassment, but again, when you can harass, you can sort of really hit them in a spot where it hurts. It can really have an impact. A further note or rule about harassment is the closer you are to your opponent's base, the more of a disproportionate response it can have, because there's sort of a psychological element to this, which is, the closer you are to your opponent's base, the sort of closer you come to what the mind sort of calls home, and the closer you strike to home, the sort of more, good lord, what's going on? They sort of becomes. I mean, you can sort of also throw off your opponent quite a bit, but just harassing points that are close to their base. It's somewhat risky, and of course works better on maps like Samoski, where occasionally, the way it works, you can sort of, get away with just hitting a point right next to the base. But if you can do that, again, there's also, I think, a guarantee of just causing a slightly larger psychological reaction. Of course, you have to be sometimes careful again, because it will draw bigger reaction from your opponent as well. Another trick, of course, is also just use this range. Try and stick to the edges of the map. Try to take the paths you normally would not. Good harassment is also, I think, requiring of taking longer paths. Again, it's going to take some more time, but a good harassment can, really pay off in this regard. Again, here, for example, taking the all the way northern path here, sneaking up. Again, I'm making sure not to stick close to my opponent's points there. I do not want to be, given away and spotted by some random unit. And then I hit the cuff point here again, denying resources from here and the fuel point. So, try to keep those in mind when harassing. When looking to slow down your opponent's resource income, and of course allowing yourself to pull ahead in resources versus your opponent. There are a lot of things you can do that sort of just build up advantages, build up edges, and that way slowly but surely pull the game into your favor. And again, if you can somehow set up for an ambush or some kind of trap, I mean, that's even better. So I think these are sort of the overall sort of most of the thoughts I can sort of immediately sort of put up here for harassment. Sort of the best ideas I think they sort of be more easily implemented by sort of players who are looking for instruction here. I mean, there's, I'm sure, much more advanced concepts, but I think this sort of covers a lot of it. As for counter-harassment tactics, they'll probably be for another video. But hopefully this has been of help to you. Hopefully this will sort of give you an extra edge in your own fights against the opponent, give you some more tools in your toolbox. If you haven't subscribed, like, share, comment on it. And if you do like what I do, do consider donating or pledging on Patreon, since, this does take time, and, time is money. So if you can offer anything, that is most appreciated. Links in the video description. You can also send in replays of your own. And this is Pro Linking. Cheers. Thank you for watching. Hope to see you all tomorrow for a nice sunny episode. Bye.